Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Um, if you've been here any time, Anthony really needs no introduction, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna, spend too long introducing him. But I do want to hit some high points. Anthony is one of the ISDs that we have here at LSAC. He is not only a um, seasoned ISD, he's also our authority on all things video. So that's podcasts, creating videos for courses, helping with animation and vocal overlays. That's not the term I wanted to use. Vocalization, I'll use that. But Anthony's done a lot of great work. I've had the pleasure in the 3 years that I've worked here to be in the same team with Anthony twice. We started here as a production manager, as did I, and we were on the same team together for about 13 months. And then he switched over to use his skills as an ISD. And 6 months later, I saw how much fun he was having, and I jumped over here as well. So, without any further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Anthony and hope everybody's ready for a great presentation. Anthony, over to you.
All right. Thank you, James. So, I'm going to flesh that out with a little 20-second background. I've been with DAU since September of 2009, so it's a pretty long time now. Began as a production manager. I was Mr. Module. If you guys, those of you who remember Rebecca Clark, I stepped into her shoes. So I had to learn how to walk in pumps. No, I didn't really have to do that, but I stepped into her responsibilities and was doing a lot of production, lot of work where you just have to be very business minded and balance the creativity and the engagement that we're trying to achieve with the realities of business constraints, scope, schedule, performance, cost, etc. So here I'm gonna try to balance things on the other way, still keeping those business realities in mind. And so I've got a presentation that's really a guide to audio visual creation. And let me just see if I can share that successfully. Let me bring up my window.
Yeah, Lori, you can stop sharing.
Are you able to see my, do I have to request control or can you see me now?
No, you can just, you should be able to just go ahead and share your screen, Anthony.
Okay. Now I've shared the PDF and you should be seeing a cover page called Sights and Sounds. Hopefully the full thing. I have it full screen right now.
Yes, sir.
You got it. Okay, good. That was my biggest technical worry. Will this thing support the PDF full screen mode? So I'm going to stay high level today. You know, audio and video, they're two different modalities, but they're in other ways they're one and the same. And I want to bring that across. I want to bring across high level concepts because I believe that the success of any design endeavor is all in the approach. How do we think about the formats, the mediums that we're going to engage? How do we think about them before we engage with the tools? So with that in mind, I want to start with the end in mind, actually. If you guys know Steve Covey and you know all those highly effective habits, start with the end in mind. The end in mind is something like this. I know we're not teaching children, but we want a happy audience. Love this photo, by the way. We don't want an unhappy audience. And that speaks to engagement. That speaks to all the things that we hope to foster. We're not fully in control of engagement, but we can set up conditions that foster it, where hopefully the subjective reaction on the other side is something amounting to delighted users. And I don't love the word user, by the way. It's a little clinical. I like thinking of people. Our learners are our friends, colleagues, our mothers, our brothers, our sisters. They're people who react to what we do. And that's why engaging these media is very powerful to transfer not just information, but emotion, to do as much as we can with them. So as I said, it's all in the approach. When we design for any medium, it's all in the approach. I like this photo. This is one of those early flight examples. This guy's medium is air and gravity. He's literally about to jump off a cliff. I think together as a university, we've got risks. We're not jumping off of cliffs, thank goodness. But you know, in any of our endeavors, we have things that are at stake. Number one, it could just be simply whether we're transferring knowledge or not. And consequent to that knowledge transfer, are our learners succeeding? Are they performing and succeeding? Or is it sort of falling flat, you know? Do the wings collapse, so to speak? And, you know, but that's a little dire, sorry. But we want good outcomes for our learners. So we want to size up our formats. We want to get our approach correct. To that end, what I try to do myself, and what I encourage people to do, is to really suspend decision making for as long as possible. We have a lot of tools, and it's very easy to default, where we just say, you know, okay, we got this hammer, and yeah, there's another nail, right? We know that old saw. But we want to be deliberative. We want to deliberate a long time. We want to think about it a lot, like this homing pigeon here. We want to circle. We want to get a lay of the land, what's possible, and ultimately we want to arrive. We want to arrive at the right choices, the right decisions, whether it's this or that modality, using this or that tool to enhance our products. Another way of thinking about this is just the idea of divergent thinking. We want to go through a period where, again, we suspend decision making. You know, divergent. Those arrows are going in all directions. They're not going together until we've created a number of choices, options for ourselves. And then at a certain point, again, being business minded, we do want to execute, right? So we begin our narrowing down process, and we converge. That's the convergent part of thinking. A lot of times we feel sort of pressured, again, by the business realities. Sometimes we feel like our decisions are being made for us. This is a very simplistic diagram, but it's just meant to convey that as complexity goes up in the products that we make, cost is going to rise. So we're balancing, whether you want to call it creativity or, again, choosing the right medium with business concerns. Some of these decisions are going to be, they might feel like they're being made for us, but at the same time, we want to choose what's right for our project. So I put some things on the line here on this curve. Some of the simplest things that you can produce in terms of cost. They may not be simple in terms of technique or execution, but just in terms of time to market and speed, speed and cost, scope. An audio interview is very fast as opposed to hiring live outsourced video with lots of planning and scripting and scheduling production dates. I've been involved in really everything along the line here. And still, we want to choose what's right for our project. So while we're staying like that pigeon, where we're circling, don't assume that you can't afford a certain thing. You may want to reallocate budget, again, because it's right for the project. Or you might say, you know what, we can economize. We don't have to do video. Video is not inherently engaging by itself. I think we've all watched videos where we were growing cobwebs on ourselves. It was so boring, where we would have rather have read something, right? Because again, the wrong format got chosen. But we do have choices. Ultimately, there's one reason to choose a format. Hopefully, what we're doing is we are picking a format that suits our content. We've kind of gone through the suitability matrix, the suitability thinking of pairing up a problem with a solution, and then I have a touchy mouse. I don't want to skip ahead too quickly. And hopefully we're choosing something that fosters a positive experience. Again, those delighted audience people that we showed in the beginning. We want some version of that. Let's get a little more specific. We've got audio, we've got video, audio versus video, what to use. But let's not think in those terms, because the truth is there's a lot of overlap between audio and video. And there's ways to kind of diagram this, maybe perhaps a Venn diagram or something. I came up with a couple of things to try to express what I mean. One of them is that we want to think in terms of a continuum, right? If you've got content that's inherently verbal, let's say, it's conceptual, it's abstract, you may be working on the verbal side of things. And if that's video, it might take the form of people in front of the camera explaining. And if done well, you don't have to worry about talking heads as like a pejorative thing. Talking heads can be wonderful. Think about your typical crime show. They're all kind of the same, right? I'm kind of hooked on a lot of these true crime shows, and they all more or less amount to a lot of B-roll, a lot of reenactment footage, punctuated by a lot of people where we're just looking at someone sitting there telling us a story. It's very, very powerful. So it's always about the content. Don't let your content be engaging. But my point here is, again, to that point of not pitting audio versus video. Video can contain a lot of verbal content, maybe to the extent that we say, you know what, we could do a job aid instead of a video. On the other hand, even something like audio, I do a lot of podcasting in various formats. When I'm scripting very deliberately, I'm always trying to think of how to visualize something. In fact, the first podcast I did, which was about design, about visual design, was an audio-only podcast, but I found ways to put pictures in people's heads just with words. So don't shortcut words. So with that continuum in mind, we have choices. It helps us realize that, based on how visual it is, how verbal it is, our solution could be all of the above, some of the above. It gives us options. It doesn't make it so cut and dry. Like often you're not going to make a horrible mistake. You just have to use that format well if you're going to use it. I was trying to find a way to sort of express what I'm talking about. Instead of that continuum, I wanted to bring across that media, and I'm thinking first of video here. When we create media for people, we're asking people to look through a window. So don't think in terms of screens when you think of video. Video, when the illusion is working correctly, it functions like a window, and we're looking through it. We're mostly, our subject matter is people mostly, because we want to identify very deeply with other people and situations. More on that to come. But how do we interpret the world via media? If we look at it like a pyramid, that's not too hierarchical. I'm putting oral content, visual content on a par with each other, but they all rest on a foundation of the verbal. And so think about it. In your video, you're gonna have people talking. You're gonna have typographic matter, and even when it's not video, let's say it's textual, you can still have people evoke sights and sounds in their minds. Text is always the verbal, and text as a format's always going to be top of the heap, top of the totem pole in the hierarchy, in the sense that it's always going to be, as a medium, it's always going to be the lowest cost, highest reach, easiest to author medium. And so, text is really king in that sense. Right? So again, this is another way of saying sights and sounds and language. All right? So the other thing to realize that all of these modes, they are languages. So we're speaking in terms of Well, I got to let me back up because I've got a slide in here just to underscore what I was saying before. Is that when we're producing things in any medium, always cater to all of the senses. Remember, just like a good novel, where you achieve full immersion, and you can see the beach that you're walking on. You can feel the spray on your face. You can smell the ocean, right? All of that has been evoked with mere words. So, and we have a problem in our industry where we tend to dismiss our textual products. Oh, it's just a page turner. And it's very ironic because in the publishing industry, when you pick up a paperback, we laud great books with phrases like it's taut and gripping, it's a page turner, right? It means that people are in the thrall of mere text as a medium. There's no pictures, there's nothing to click on, there's no graphics, all that supposed engagement. You don't necessarily need it if you're authoring very well in your chosen medium. But with all of the above, this idea that there's the visual component, the oral, the verbal, think of them all as languages. The same way we'll get a Rosetta Stone course and we want to learn Spanish or French. Think of visual language. You want to learn some of the craft rules and techniques to producing visual media, be that graphic design or video, whether it's oral, stuff that's made for the ears, ranging the gamut from spoken word to sound design. All of these things have their language with their own idioms and tropes that fall within each category. And again, I use the verbal example. When you're writing, make the most of text, right? Another way of saying it is that if words are the foundation of everything, then let us script well in every format, be it text, audio, video, which brings us to storytelling, which is the best application of rich media. Now I'm going to approach this. I want to give you a little crash course on storytelling, but don't be put off by storytelling. I'm not necessarily meaning that we have to, our products have to take the form of once upon a time, and there's a beginning and a middle and an end. What I'm saying is that there are elements of story that can put our content in bold relief, where if there's a challenge to be understood, we can, without exploiting it, we can dramatize it, we can heighten the sense of what that is. And I'm going to develop that a little bit more in the next few slides. So a crash course on storytelling. If any of you guys have studied it at all, the first thing you're going to hear is that story is drama, and drama equals conflict. And that means like any opposing force. So Aristotle famously had so many numbers of like man versus this, that man versus the gods, man versus man, man versus animal, I think, all these different things. The truth is there's really one conflict to remember. It's just simply the opposing forces of something versus another thing. And what we find so engaging is that as soon as we're just wired in our brains, it's part of our survival, it's just part of the way we're put together, is that when we see a barrier, we're thinking of how we can either overcome it or not, right? This further distills into this idea of having established a conflict, right? And think in terms of a character, right? We have a character in a story. They take action against the conflict. Think of the movie Jaws, right? You've got a sheriff in an island called Amity. He's afraid of the water. That's one of his conflicts. That's this inner conflict of his fear. His marriage, especially in the novel, his marriage is problematic. And then the most external thing is this shark that he has to battle. And so various actions are taken, and we're in the grip of the story as character goals are established, and the character hits certain roadblocks, different complications, setbacks. And then finally, Martin Brody, Sheriff Brody, he realizes having foreshadowed that oxygen tanks can explode, he gets them into the mouth of the shark, and he shoots the tanks with a rifle at some point. And here we have the climax of everything, and a resolution. So I'm laboring to explain this because I see a parallel that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. I don't know if I'm the first one to talk about this. I don't want to give myself that much credit, but I just haven't heard it said. I see a parallel to the way we structure learning objectives as instructional designers. Okay. This is a further breakdown here. Conflict, someone wants something, he has obstacles. His actions are the act of overcoming. And then there's the denouement or resolution. But getting to that idea of our learning content, we have learners who have objectives, which if you think in terms of the story, if they are the star of their life, if they're the character in this tale, they're facing objectives which, looked at another way, they're challenges. They could be hurdles to overcome. And the goal is to achieve those competencies and performance objectives, and so that you have a positive outcome, which is good performance. So again, I'm not suggesting necessarily, unless you're doing explicit like simulation type of writing, scenario-based learning, which is lovely, and it's a wonderful way for people to identify with the role that they're trying to project themselves into. You don't have to do all that. You don't have to do the deliberate storytelling, but you can take elements. You can emphasize perhaps the character aspect that someone is in this role, and we make it really, we heighten that understanding that they're in a role. Or rather than gloss over problems that they'll have, we want to heighten them, because that is dramatic in a sense. I'm not, again, not the exploitative dramatizing, but again, making sure they understand the threat to, let's say it's project management, the threats they'll encounter when, the boogeymen of, scope creep come to get them, things like that, right? And having overcome those things, we have good performance outcomes. So this is really the heart of what I want to convey, is that audio and video and your textual matter they're all mediums within which we can have our learners deeply identify with the performance that they're trying to achieve. In other words, you're projecting them into a role and causing them to identify deeply. So if you're going to use video, let it be that window I'm describing, where they're looking through and they're identifying with situations, with people, whether it's just someone telling a vivid story with a business principle embedded or something else. Try to use it well. Now, here's the secret of story. This is what makes story so powerful. When you ask somebody what story is for, most people are going to say, well, it's for entertainment. The reason I read books or I go to a movie or go to a play, it's, people are thinking of escapism and entertainment. But the deeper thing, it's the stuff that makes us tick, is that we're actually deeply identifying with the characters. If you've ever had what Roger Ebert calls that out-of-body experience, where he's in a movie, this has happened to me a couple of times, where you've forgotten yourself. You've had like an out-of-body experience where you were so engrossed that you kind of became that character. You forgot that you're in a movie theater until the lights go back on. Okay, that's really difficult to achieve, that full immersion. But we want to settle for engagement, which is a word we used, and hopefully I've defined it for you well. And again, just defining that this is learners projecting themselves into the roles that they will perform. Okay, so with that in mind, I just want to leave us with a question, and we can open up for discussion. How can we use media to help our learners identify more deeply with their roles and their goals? And that's it from me. That's me. For those of you who've been here, who haven't met me, That's what I look like. And you can get me at, actually, there's a dot in there, forgive me, Anthony.Rotolo at dau.edu. So forgive the typo, but that's how you'll reach me. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I think I'm back on camera. Is that right?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Thank you.
James, did you want to have any close? I saw you come on camera real quick.
Oh no, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I,
So,
I think closing it out with a question the way Anthony did is great.
perfect. So before we start, open that up to question and answer, I am going to share that Lori's going to post a link in the chat, and that's just a quick survey. Did you like the session? What other topics would you like to see? It's real short. I think it's only 3 or 4 questions. Would love it if you guys could give us some feedback. We are the User Experience Directorate, so we thrive on getting the feedback. Anthony loved the session today. That was great. So I'm going to open it up if you would like to ask Anthony some questions. And just as a refresher, we're setting these sessions up to be quick, 30 minutes, so you can drop in if you have. We know everybody's time is so valuable. Drop in, try and get the meat of it. But then if you want to stay and ask questions, we've got an extra half an hour built onto the end. So if you guys have some questions, please come off of mute or post them in the chat. And I see Rhonda has a question. Do you have some great do you have some great examples of this in audio and video?
Do you mean learning assets and things, those kinds of things that we've developed for DAU?
It could be for DAU or potentially something else. Let's say if you feel like we should aspire to something greater. I think one bit of feedback, because I love these sessions, is we always need examples.
Yeah,
we need examples of world-class learning assets and everything else we describe as, you know, the best way to do this.
We do a lot of world-class work at DAU, but I'll give you some DAU examples, but I'll give you even bigger suggestions. We have the Powerful Examples series that we've done that has taken the form of sort of all the above. When I was showing you that cost curve, we did have the ability to structure them after a while where we would do location shoots. We bring in an outsourced team, really good people, the people that they might have been stepping off of like a PBS production or something, and showing up either at our campus or at some other remote location that we had to travel to. And so we've done the high-end video, but using that video, we in that case, we made the decision to keep it to between 5 and 10 minutes, to have a lot of people telling stories, a lot of narration overlay. You can go seek out Powerful Examples on our website. The other thing that we did with that were podcast-style interviews where I had the luxury to take one or more of the team members where we were learning about their acquisition success and just probing them more deeply, asking them a lot of questions, making it very conversational. That may have, where the other thing, you had 5 to 10 minutes to give that tip of the iceberg salient presentation. Here, we could spend sometimes they were an hour long of talking about whether it was like the B-52 engine replacement program, and had a round table of people to talk with, or 1 or 2 other people. We did a lot of that type of thing where we had multiple examples. In terms of, I want you to think though, in terms of these are languages to learn: visual language, verbal, and it's even in wonderful movies that we watch, where you think it's just visual storytelling. It's not really. Things, if you had a meter that was that verbal to visual scale, you'd see the needle like constantly moving across from scene to scene. And an example that I like to point out, I'm going to test you. This is a deep cut from the movie world, but who has seen Steven Spielberg's? First of all, do you know what Steven Spielberg's first film was? Feature film? Can anyone answer that for 10 points? It's a movie called Duel. It was a made-for-television film, D-U-E-L. starring Dennis Weaver being chased across a desert highway by a homicidal maniac who we never see really, but he's in a diesel smoke belching truck, this big tanker truck. And this guy is just bent on killing Dennis Weaver. So that's the setup. We have scenes that are very verbal, including where we even hear the voiceover thoughts of Dennis Weaver after he's come away from one of these hair-raising episodes on the road. Other stretches, there are long stretches where it's a virtual silent movie, where it's just pure visual storytelling. It's camera shots, it's facial expressions. It's noticing that the truck is getting closer to him. You know, he might have, he got some distance from him by going up the grade where the trucks start to slow down. But now the guy is back on his heels. And you can go for long stretches telling stories. And again, think of the verbal. In our minds, even though it's pure visual storytelling, our thoughts get processed with verbal language. So it's just a reminder that all those elements are there. That's why I was trying to depict a pyramid with the verbal, whether it's oral or typographic, at the foundation. But you can look for great examples. It could be anything. It could be from a music video to whatever it is. That's a great example of craft. Now, at the same time, I wound up not putting this in the presentation because it got squeezed out. Remember that it's content trumps production value. So think of the Zapruder film. Think of, you know, what the Zapruder film is, right? This is the 8mm footage of JFK's assassination. It's very grim to watch. This is not by any means an example of highly refined cinematography. This is just some schmo named Zapruder who had a little handheld camera on the street or from some vantage point. Think also of the Patterson film for all you Bigfoot aficionados who know that there's a giant hairy ape out there somewhere. Shaky camera, it's not refined. Again, let your content be compelling. That's why in this age, sometimes the biggest problem we have, the biggest mistake, is we're looking for the great studio within which to work, where everything's beautiful looking, when phone camera, in the right circumstances, something you shot on your phone under non-ideal circumstances can be very, very compelling. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, and I see Marina has her hand up, but Marina, before I get to you, I did want to throw out there, and I understand Rhonda's question because I don't consider myself a creative, and so it always helps for me to have something concrete that I could look at. I know, James, you have, I think you and Alicia are working on quality rubric and also, you know, engagement, excitement. I don't remember the name of the other thing. Do we have some concrete examples of the wow or the thing, or, you know, some of examples that might exemplify what Anthony's talking about?
So one of the things that the short answer is right now, no, but it is something that we are compiling and putting together examples of high quality, high engagement lessons, for examples throughout what we're calling them is North Star projects that development teams can look at and say, you know, get some inspiration from.
Well, I'm going to have to beg to differ because we actually have so many TED Talks and they exemplify what Anthony has been talking about. So with all the credit to the TEDxDAU team, and Anthony has done some great work in developing stories of all the speakers and the coaches and journaling that journey. But if you take a look at a TED Talk, a TEDxDAU talk, and we have 12, 30, how many do we have? 36 of them so far. Those are actually built on the storytelling arc that Anthony so deliberately and so expertly walked us through. And so we built every TED Talk based on the concept of the big idea, the three supporting elements, and each one is ethos, pathos, and logos based on Aristotle's focus, which is ethos is the data or your background. What is it that you're bringing? The character of the speaker coming into the topic. The logos is the data, the supporting data. If you look at our TEDx DAU talks, every single one of them is backed by specific data. And then the third element is the passion. And if you deconstruct a TED talk, a TEDx DAU talk, you will see that they're all based on that same concept. Big idea on top, three supporting elements. Some of them may have 4 or 5. And then on the bottom is the closing call to action line. What else? What are you going to do? How are you as the audience are going to be engaged? And we do have significant data that show that this audio and visual examples have been really embraced by our workforce. For example, as you know, that very first TEDx CAU, we had 16,000 views of those 12 talks within 2 weeks of the event. And then over the last 2 years, we've had over 6,000 people register and over 3,000 people engaged. So I believe if we do look closely at all the great work that we're doing, we will find examples of excellence that align with what Anthony was discussing. And so sometimes we forget that we have all these great things in our own backyard. So I do recommend that we go back to TEDx CAU website and find some of these TED Talks. And I've put the link in there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to PJ and Karen and their team and find out more. But those TED Talks are available for us to use and incorporate into our courses. And with that, I'll stop here. But thank you, Anthony. Okay. I really enjoyed the presentation.
And that's great. However, I was answering the specific question that Brenda asked about, did we have them in a repository for people to go? So from the LSAC standpoint, we have not built, we're in the process of building that repository where course developers will have examples, what we're calling North Star learning projects, where they can go in, and it may include some of the TED Talk videos, but as of right now, we don't have a centralized location where they can go. It's coming, it just hasn't been developed yet.
Thank you. And that I think there's a little nuance difference. So thank you, Marina. Yes, I agree that TED, and it is all about storytelling, is great, but it's also, for those of us less creative to think of something, because I think of those TED Talks as being something I'm passionate about as a speaker. So it's easy to communicate it. But how do we take something that's more, learning focused, and it could be that it's not real exciting, and take that and turn it into it. So I love that we have both, and we look forward to seeing that from James. I also see that Eric has his hand up. Go ahead, Eric.
Sorry. So I don't think DAU takes advantage of media or audio files as much as we should. And I base that on my, 30-year-old kids that listen to podcasts all the time and are always sending me, things to listen to. And so how are we doing in that corporately? Are we, setting up appropriate channels or making it easier for people to find audio files to download while they're driving to, wherever they're driving to, or things like that?
We have a few formal public-facing podcasts. You can find them at dau.edu/podcasts. And that shows the 3 that are regularly developed shows. The first of them was the Learning Circle, which had as its audience not DAU principally, but the because we're colleagues in this industry And we hadn't been doing conferences. We used to, get with George Mason and have conferences, but this was a way for us to participate in the industry dialogue. So those are generally monthly published. Those are out there. We did a series last year under the banner of DAU podcast to tell the JADF coronavirus story, and the third series is called All Things Small Business. And in each case, I'm interviewing people. They're all interview format, whether it's a learning expert or someone who has some example of acquisition success. But you can grab them there. You can also, our technical team's done a great job of getting them on the DAU app. So they have functionality where you can subscribe and download to the DAU app. You can get them on your own smartphone, whatever you're using. They're out at Apple.
I'm with you, and I agree. That's the step in the right direction. But I think we still need to do more, and either figure out a way to add this to our world-class content that we're creating.
Absolutely. We should talk after the session, because we have to put legs under our good intentions, right?
Yep.
There's a road that goes to somewhere that's paved with good intentions, but we have to put legs under our thoughts.
And I see, Marianne, you came on camera. Do you have a comment?
Nope, just trying to be present. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Anthony? And if not, we will give you guys a time back. And once again, thank you guys for attending. And please fill out the survey, which was posted in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you. Oh, I will give you a plug for next week's session is Marina's going to be presenting on her Reinventing Communities pilot that's going on and giving us an update on that. So look forward to seeing you guys next week. And with that, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Great job.
Thanks, Anthony.
And Lori, you can stop the video. That way we won't have to cut it too much at the end.